I believe behind every temptation of Satan, there's essentially one question. And if we can answer that one question definitively between us and God, it will help us live more faithfully. One of the places the Bible answers that question, I believe, is in 2 Chronicles chapter 25. King Amaziah is the king of Judah, and he's about to lead his army against the nation of Edom. But he's worried he doesn't have enough people in his army, so he hires the unfaithful northern kingdom of Israel to bring men into his army, and he gives them 100 talents of silver to join him. The prophet of God comes to Amaziah and says that northern kingdom of Israel has not been faithful to God. And if they're part of your army, God's not going to bless your army. King Amaziah says, but what about the 100 talents of silver that I've already given to them? And the prophet says in verse 9, the Lord has much more to give you than this. In other words, don't worry about your 100 talents of silver. What you want is God's blessing. Behind every temptation of Satan is essentially that question. Satan wants you to think that his path is better than God's path. But if I can remember in my mind, God doesn't give me his laws just because he wants me to see if I obey them or not. God gives me his laws because they're the best possible path for my life, for my relationships, both in this life and the next. If only you could talk to your future self. I think your future self would say, the blessings you want are God's, not what Satan's promising. That's what Eve needed to trust when Satan comes to her in the Garden of Eden and tempts her to eat the fruit. God's path had led to all these blessings in the Garden of Eden. Satan's path would lead to be separated from God and all the pain of sin that would follow. This is what David needed to trust in the case with Bathsheba. God's blessings and God's path had led to all the wonderful things in his life. And when he takes the path of sin, it leads to all sorts of pain in his family. By contrast, when Satan comes to Jesus and offers him the whole world, Jesus says no, in part because he knew God's blessings are always better than anything the world has to offer. And so when Satan comes to you and offers you something, you've got to remember, I want God's blessings, not the path of sin. Satan's going to tempt you and say, if you'll just lie or cheat or steal, you'll have more money or better grades. But God has more to give you than this. He's going to come to you and say, if you'll just get revenge on your enemy, you'll feel better. If you just tell them what you think they need to hear, you'll feel better. But God has better blessings than that. Satan's going to come and say, here, chase the passing pleasures of sin. It'll be fun. But God has better blessings than that too. Whatever Satan's temptation is, he's always trying to get you to think his path is better than God's. As people of faith, let's remember, we want God's blessings, not the path of sin. And let's be ready to tell Satan, the Lord has much more to give me than whatever you're offering. If you're in the Memphis area, we would love to have you join us at the Great Oaks Church of Christ. We take the name Church of Christ because we're simply trying to be followers of Jesus Christ, undenominational Christians. We would love for you to join us in that goal. We hope to see you Sunday.